here to bring you up to date and set the agenda for you as far as the day is concerned. Tell you exactly what you're waking up to as far as these newspapers are concerned, stories that are making headlines and what to expect today as the day progresses. And I want us to take a look at the dailies today, and we all of course start with the People Daily, which is our publication here at Media Max Limited. And the top story on the People Daily is confusion over Ruto nominees. Intrigue in dramatic turn. President William Ruto demotes Aden Duale to environment as his AG pick Miano's name misses on list of those to be vetted by the House. This is a story on the front page of the People Daily, and it is a story on page 4. Let me just take a look at that and tell you exactly what it says. Now, the confusion surrounding the new cabinet persisted yesterday after President William Ruto amended the initial list with the nominee for the defense docket Aden Duale swapping places with the environment counterpart Soipan Tuya. There was more confusion after the name of the nominee for the Attorney General's office, Rebecca Miano, was conspicuously missing from the list forwarded to Parliament for vetting. Now, the changes communicated by the National Assembly Speaker, that is Moses Wetangula, caught MPs by surprise, with many thinking he had heard and demanding that he rereads the communication from the President. That is a story on page 4 of the People Daily. You can get that particular newspaper and go through that particular story. Also on the front page of the People Daily is Raila's ODM now declares it doesn't want cabinet slots. This is a story on page 2. Now, in an escalation of divisions in Orange Party, officials warn anybody intending to join government will do so as an individual. Of course, this message that was passed by ODM Secretary General, that is Edwin Sifuna. Now, opposition leader Raila Odinga's Orange Democratic Party yesterday made an about turn over its earlier decision to be included in President William Ruto's cabinet and warned her members to do so at their own peril. In what could be interpreted as a move aimed at giving in to public pressure that had not taken Raila's decision to President Ruto's government, the Orange Party dismissed the accusations that the party has flip-flopped on the matter as false. Now, instead, ODM warned its members who make themselves available to join the Kenya Kwanza cabinet or any other position should not drag the name of the party and should do so as individuals. Another story that is top on this particular newspaper is why Kenya's population is a ticking time bomb. That's a story on page 12 of this particular newspaper. You can get it there. And also the events that marked yesterday, and that is 3,500 officers deployed to battle brave Gen Zs. Now, this is a story on page 3 of the People Daily. Now, anti-government protesters ban a motorbike belonging to a pro-Ruto demonstrator when the two groups clashed in Nairobi's Mama Ngina Street yesterday. This is a story on page 3 of the People Daily. Let us also take a look at what is happening on other newspapers, and let's take a look at the Standard. And the front page of the Standard says, ghost towns as Ruto CSS intrigues deepen. Now, the military stepped in to stop protesters from marching to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as Nairobi and Migori bore the brunt of yesterday's protest by Gen Z. Now, in Parliament, however, the list of cabinet secretaries to be vetted was tabled with shocking changes and omission. This is a story on page 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9 of the Standard newspaper. Also on the front page of this particular newspaper, you'll find the acid test for Raila in ODM over goodies. Opposition leader is facing serious rebellion both in his party and coalition since the president invited leaders for government talks. He has tried to dissociate himself to no success, rather. This is a story on page 8 of the Standard. All right. U.S. polls, Kamala gets support, starts campaign. Of course, a lot of Democrats have been supporting Kamala Harris after he was nominated. That is by President Joe Biden, who actually stepped out of the race. And of course, he's waiting for the official nomination from her party, that is the Democratic Party. Okay, now that is the Standard. Also, let's take a look at what is happening on the Daily Nation. Now, day of defiance, of course, just across all other newspapers that we've had the privilege to look at this particular morning. Also, the events of yesterday are shaping the agenda of today as far as news is concerned. Now, anti-government protesters yesterday ignored President William Ruto's warning and took to the streets in several towns, paralyzing business activities for the upteenth time. Now, in central Nairobi, pro-government supporters who seem to have the express backing of the police kept the youthful demonstrators at bay. This is a story on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Daily Nation. And also on the front page of the Daily Nation, we have questions as Duale Soipan swap places in new cabinet list. Of course, we'll be getting into the details of this in our conversation this morning as we look at the state of the nation. President William Ruto surprised the nation yesterday when he tapped Ms. Soipan Tuya for the defense docket, swapping her with Mr. Aden Duale, who moved to environment, climate change and forestry in the latest changes of proposed cabinet list. He did this in national copy and tech standard in debut. The news, she had already gotten donation close to 84 million ever since she announced that she will be running for president. Now, that is as far as the dailies are concerned, and I want us to look at something here that has been highlighted on the Standard, and that this has to do with the acid test for Raila Odinga. Story on the People Daily, talking about Raila's ODM now declares it doesn't want cabinet slots. I want to engage my guests on this particular front page story on this dailies today. This is the thing. The national conversation has been the center of attention and talk in the country. Let me start with you, Josephine. There's seem to be flip-flopping, especially from the opposition, on whether we should be joining government or have a conversation on whether we actually do want to be included in government as far as CS positions is concerned or not. The message initially was a little bit clear, but as we continue moving forward, there seems to be a change of tune every now and then that is threatening to even tear the opposition apart. What's your take on this first?
Thank you for having me first, and thank you, K24, for always inviting me to your studios. Now, on the question on ODM and let me just call it Azimio coalition and the CS positions, I think the simple answer to that, speaking even from a Gen Z perspective, is that we really do not care whether Azimio decides to take CS positions or not. The question should be, are they competent enough? Are they willing to drive the country forward? This whole revolution, and the reason why even the CS positions were removed and reshuffled, were because you want more competent people there. We do not care whether you are Kenya Kwanza, you are Azimio. Okay, if you're independent, have you got the right documents? Are you ready? Have you the country's interests at heart? Okay. Are you ready to lead the country forward? So this flip-flopping and trying to ride on top of these demonstrations, saying that now we are for the Gen Zs, is actually against us. So at this point, the Azimio, the party conditions should not be a conversation in this table, I think. Yeah.
Honorable Kanyithia, this is the thing. 11 nominees were presented by the head of state. The rest, of course, with people saying, of course, the remaining number is because the opposition coalition did not get to agree on who exactly they needed to pick for these particular positions. And right now, when it looked like maybe they could be coming out and agreeing finally, they seem to be, taking a different turn. What do you read from all this now that you are one of the persons in the political space?
Thank you very much, Brian. The constitutional provision is that once a government is formed, we should see the face of Kenya. And every government that has been in place, and here, the Kenyan constitution clearly says the winner takes it. Therefore, the winner needs to form a government which shows the face of Kenya. Now, every time that happens, the government in place looks for somebody from all over. In the current, just disbanded cabinet, we have people from all parts of this country. But of course, not in the proportions that you may probably expect. And that has been an issue. Now, once the government extended the olive branch to the opposition, or Azimio, to try and come into the government. And I think the best way to show the face of Kenya is to actually agree with the other side of the divide and request them to give you names of the people that they would like them to represent them in cabinet. That probably, in the understanding and interpretation of the winner takes it, may not have been happening. But we have seen in Kenya over the last 3 or so governments some form of coalition. And there was Nusum Kate, there has also been the handshake and so on. And this is now another one of the kind. So there has been a bit of confusion when it comes to Azimio. One part of Azimio one day wakes up and says we are interested. The other part says we are not part of it. And then sometimes we hear they have had a meeting and they have agreed on certain factors that needs to be put in place, or certain conditions that needs to be met, so that they can now join the government. Now, joining the government here is providing names for taking certain slots in the cabinet, and this has come in as a result of, after a long time of condemning the performance of the government and the constitution of the government itself, and the lack of inclusivity. So we are seeing a little bit of confusion in Azimio, and this is mainly on the side of Wiper and others, but ODM seems to be speaking a language that we are also not very clear, because in the house yesterday I saw one of my colleagues stand in the house and say they are tired of being referred to as people outside the government. They would also like to be part of the government. Okay, now but on the other hand, you find others.
In most cases, that's normally what we argue about. Because the argument initially has always been anybody that serves in the house is part of government. I don't know where we draw the line and say now you're not part of government despite you being elected. How does that come up?
Yeah, we define government in many different ways. It's government of the people, by the people, for the people. Everybody actually is in the government. But the actors, you look at the actors and classify them and brand them as these are the government. This is the government, like cabinet, the PSs, the CSs and others, and the CEOs and others, those who are really in executive. When you come to the House, we are majority and minority. And the idea is that the majority propose or support the government, if, of course, they were the majority and they formed the government. And on the other hand, the minority checks on the majority. What has been happening in this country is very different, and that's a topic for another day. Let me come back to what the issue that our honorable lady here has brought to the fore. What is important for this country is people who can deliver. We have seen in the past cabinet changes, we've seen names floated and so on, and we have seen people performing. I can give names, people like the Michokis. Michoki was able to transform every ministry, every sector he went to. So I actually don't see, touching on the issue of Duale and the Soipan, I don't see any demotion or promotion here. Probably the president thinks it looks at it differently. But
let me ask this, because before I come to Dr. Hassan. You said when forming government, it needs to be, the face of Kenya.
The face of Kenya.
But this is the thing. Yeah. Does that mean, in what now we call the opposition, does that mean that the opposition has to be on the table for us to have the face of Kenya?
It is actually the interpretation. You see, when the opposition is not consulted to provide the names of who is being nominated, and that has been discussed even here. I remember I was in one forum when we were discussing who actually represents who. They say we've not been consulted. So the person who is there is an appointee of the president. He owes the president total alliance. So he has no relationship with the minority. So the minority wants to feel part of the government as having submitted a name of a person they believe will be checking the government from inside and probably showing, through example, the kind of delivery that probably is expected.
Okay, so let me ask you, this is the thing, you have an opposition that wants to be consulted when it comes to providing names of people that are going to sit in the cabinet and things like that, but you also have a president that needs people who are loyal to him. Where do you draw the line and how do you balance that?
Right, good morning. Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you, my colleagues who have come here. I think we prescribe to the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, particularly Chapter 6, which talks about integrity and leadership. And Kenyans are bleeding. This is a nation that is bleeding because we are sandwiched between political political groups or political elites and Kenyans who are reading the same script, one reading from the front page and the other one reading from the back page. Why am I saying that? I think in governance, it is very obvious that whenever you want to establish a government, there are two entities. There is the ruling party and there is the opposition. And at one point, we don't find them coming together for a common goal. Why are they not coming together? Is because each of them, in the onset of their campaign, wanted to become a government or to form the government. If they were not able to form the government, they join the opposition so that they do what is called the check and balance of the government of the day. If we lose that grip, then there will be no government that will be responsible to the people who have elected them. Secondly, when you look at the reason as to why we are here at the moment, the nation is where they are for a purpose, not just because we had an issue with opposition or the government of the day. What was the issue? Our young generation, Gen Zs, were asking for transparency, accountability, reduction of corruption, or rather issues related to corruption. They were looking at, they were asking for issues related to performance in terms of government services, and of course cutting the wage bill. I don't see any of those being visualized in the current arithmetics, because I don't understand how the opposition has came in to the extent that now they talk about a slot, ministerial slot in the government. However, when you look at someone saying that we want the face of Kenya, I mean, there's no region that is branded as an opposition. Okay. People are, every person in any region could be in the government or could be in the opposition. And therefore, picking people by doing what is called the regional balance gives us a very clear vision on balancing or bringing the face of the nation. But that does not warrant that we have considered opposition or getting a proposal from the opposition. Okay. The other thing before we just go away is that if you have listened very keenly yesterday, my brother and the rest of parliamentarians, when they were opening Parliament and discussing some few contentious issues, we are a bit disturbed by one of the member of Parliament, whom my brother has just mentioned, saying that we are tired of being in the opposition. But there's something he has said which will going to boil up this nation if we go through the same route, which is, he said that we are tired of being always called the opposition, one. But you know, one thing he said is that we know the people who have been proposed by the president to tapitisha hawa. Now we will not going to have any issue with them. And Raila Odinga to bring his slot as soon as even today, so that to pitisha yote. So he did not even look at the weight of the demand from the nation. And if the demand is lost, then we will going to have, you know, people who have been tapped by individual political
so what you're saying
interests.
is that the statement has the potential to have us
to go back to where we were.
Exactly.
We expected the parliamentarians,
people that are not qualified and people that have questionable character, because we are doing a favor to the head of state.
And above all, we wanted our parliamentarians to redeem themselves this time around. The way we said the president must redeem himself by bringing on board people of integrity, the fact that we have helped him to dismantle the people who himself referred to them as non-performers. And if he has returned them now, then it will be now parliamentarians to redeem themselves and do their job, not in favor of either political party or individual political leader whom they subscribe to in terms of loyalty, but they should come out clearly and interview people who have been appointed by the executive and come out with people who are clean in terms of their record, in terms of their performance, and we expect them to be tasked to do their job in order for us to achieve quality governance in this nation.
Okay. Let me come to you because we'll be getting deeper into the conversation around, the CS nominees and also the changes that were done yesterday, plus the issues to do with people taking to the streets, because that is now forming our conversation on the state of the nation. But I want to clear on this top story on these newspapers. And that has to do with, of course, the opposition. You're the person that is going to wind up on this political conversation. This is the thing. When we are looking at the, fighting for these particular positions to this particular extent, how does that speak to the nature of our politics from a young person's perspective?
Now, from a young person's perspective, I am a Kibaki. I'm a Kibaki graduate. I have studied with that regime, and I understand that most of these people, especially the leader of the opposition of ODM, Raila Odinga, he has been contesting for the presidential seat ever since before I was born. Okay. That is great, and he's still contested even in the last one, and have mad respect for him and so many other in the political arena. But as a young person, what I do not understand is, I know there is a ruling party and there's an opposition party, and the opposition party is there to keep the ruling party on toes, much like what Gen Zs are doing, making sure that they are quite accountable and there are no pilferages when it comes to corruption and what have you. But what I don't understand is, being in opposition, does that mean that yes, you contest that these people are not fit to have a seat in the cabinet, but you're contesting for what motive? Is it so that you yourself can get a share of the cake, or is it that you have the country's interest at heart? And that is the bone of content, even in the demonstrations as at now. It's great that they are contesting and saying, we also want to have a say in the cabinet reshuffling, but what is their motive? Is their motive so that they can just, also get some people there so that they can have a piece of the cake? That is my view as a young person's perspective. And now, hearing what my colleagues have just said about what was said at the National Assembly, it greatly worries me. Saying that the president has brought these names and to our petition. You've not even seen their papers and whatnot, because even the previous cabinet coming back, fine, all right, maybe some of the previous cabinet secretaries they did their job, they're competent and what have you, but let's come back, let's vet them correctly. Are they able to lead the country into a better development of Kenya? That is the question we have right now. So it even worries me, even at the National Assembly level, where they actually do have a say. Are we really safe?
All right. I think that's a good point to take a break. As we look forward to coming back and talking more about some of the stories that have been shaping the nation's agenda today, and that has to be the protests that we've experienced, especially yesterday, across the country and especially here in Nairobi. Looking at the real state of the nation, what is it that is forming this particular conversation? All right. So we are taking a break here on New Dawn. Continue engaging us on our socials at Amoy Brian, that is on X, at K24 TV, across social media platforms. We'll be sampling your feedback as we continue with this conversation. What do you think is the real state of the nation?